Hello, my dear Form 5 student. Welcome to our normal Elimika program. The subject is biology, and the topic we have at hand is nutrition. You can remember during the starting of this topic, we said that nutrition is divided into two forms, that is autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. Our last lesson concluded autotrophic nutrition, particularly photosynthesis. And you can remember the part that we ended up with was the factors that affect the rate of photosynthesis. You can remember the external factors and the internal factors. And at the end of the lesson, we had some questions that you were given to solve so that you can remember various concepts as far as the heterotrophic nutrition is concerned. Now, the task ahead of us today is the second type of nutrition, that is heterotrophic nutrition. Well, what is heterotrophic nutrition? What is heterotrophic nutrition? Try to remember what you defined, what you explained during your Form 2 course. Well, heterotrophic nutrition can be defined as a type of nutrition in which those organisms that are unable to manufacture their own food make use of the ready-made food to sustain their needs. And the organisms that feed heterotrophically are called heterotrophs. And they can be exemplified by animals, fungi. You can talk of some protoctists. And we have the different types of heterotrophic nutrition. There are different types of heterotrophic nutrition, which include, one, we have symbiosis. The word symbiosis literally means living together. And therefore, nutritionally, organisms are said to be symbiotically related, and this form of symbiotic relationship falls in different categories. The first one, we have mutualism. Well, mutualism or mutual relationship, as far as nutrition is concerned, involves two organisms of different species that live together in where both categories or both organisms or both members of the partnership benefits the association. So it means this form of nutrition is beneficial to both parties. A form of nutritional partnership. We have one part, call it X, another organismal part, call it Y. And the benefits are experience a two-way traffic. Y is benefiting from X, and X is equally benefiting from Y. An example of such a symbiotic relationship, we have the bacteria and some fungi or protozoans that live in the stomach-alimentary canal of the ruminants. Ruminants, these feed on vegetation, but they are unable to produce cellulose, an enzyme responsible for catalyzing the digestion of cellulose, a major component of the plants. And therefore, it is these organisms, the bacteria, protozoans, and what have you, which normally produce cellulose to digest, to catalyze the digestion of cellulose. So in one way, these microorganisms benefit by getting food, I mean cellulose, but at the same time, they are getting accommodation. They are getting, or they are harbored by the animals. On the other hand, the animals themselves, the ruminants, such as cattle, sheep, goat, and others, these are benefiting from the microorganisms by having the cellulose digested. That was mutualism. The second one is commensalism. Well, the word commensalism, this is coming from two terms. We have com, which means together, and then mensa, which means table. So the word commensalism literally means eating at the same table. You are on the same table, sharing the same plate, enjoying the same food, but you don't recognize each other. So it is a form of a symbiotic association in which two organisms, again, of different species live together. One organism is benefiting. This is called a commensal. The other one does not suffer any effect from the association. The other one, which is the host, does not benefit, nor does it get harmed by the association. Example here, we have the hydrozoan animal in association with the crab. This hydrozoan attaches itself on the crab, and it used to feed on the scraps, on the leftovers, on the remains of the food after the crab has eaten. So it means this hydrozoan is benefiting its association with the crab by getting food. But on the other hand, the crab does not benefit, nor does it get harmed by the presence of this hydrozoan. I mean, the commensal. The third type, we have parasitism. In this case, again, we have an association of two organisms of different species. One, I mean the parasite, is benefiting. The parasite benefits, but the host suffers negative consequences for the presence of the parasite. And this parasite may have or may exist internally within the body of the host, and in this case it is called an endoparasite, or it can be found on the surface, on the skin of the host. In this case, it is called an ectoparasite. Ectoparasites may be exemplified by arthropods like bedbugs. We have ticks and the like. The endoparasites here, we have parasites like Plasmodium, a causative agent of malaria. We have the worms, pinworms, roundworms, and the like. Now, apart from symbiotic sort of heterotrophic nutrition, the second form of heterotrophic nutrition, we have saprophytic nutrition. Well, saprophytic nutrition, this involves feeding on the decaying organic matter. It is a form of a heterotrophic nutrition in which organisms feed on the decaying organic matter. And they are exemplified by, we have saprophytic fungi such as muca. We have mushrooms. These normally produce what we call exoenzymes. They secrete enzymes externally. The enzymes are poured on the material to be digested, to be fed on, I mean the decaying organic matter. Digestion takes place externally, and the saprophytes absorbs the nutrients into their bodies. There are some other cases where the organisms feed on the decaying organic matter, but by taking in smaller particles which have to be digested inside. In this case, those are called detritivores. We have examples of detritivores. Here we have earthworm. These are feeding on the decaying organic matter, but by taking in the particles which have to be digested inside, to be digested internally, within their bodies. For the saprophytic organisms, these decompose. They decompose the organic matter by breaking down larger organic molecules into smaller inorganic nutrients. Apart from saprophytic nutrition, we have what we call holozoic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition, what is it all about? Well, this is a typical animal nutrition. It is a typical animal nutrition. It is a form of heterotrophic nutrition in where the animals or the organisms ingest, take in food in a solid or liquid form, which is then digested and absorbed by the body itself. It is involving intake of the food in either liquid, solid form, which is then digested and then absorbed by the body itself. So the holozoically feeding animals fall in three main categories. The first one, we have the herbivores. Well, the herbivorous animals, these are grass eaters. They feed on vegetation. And they include cattle, we have sheep, we have goat, antelope, and others. The second category, we have the carnivores. The carnivores are simply meat eaters or flesh eaters. They include lion, cats, dogs, and the like. And the third category comprises of omnivores. The omnivorous animals feed on both veg and meat. And they exemplified by human beings, pigs, and the like. So I've said that holozoic nutrition involves the introduction of the food into the digestive tract. Now, let us see the steps involved in holozoic nutrition. Steps in holozoic nutrition. The steps that the food follows when it is eaten holozoically include: 1, ingestion. Now, what is ingestion? What is ingestion? This is simply the introduction of food into the buccal oral cavity. Introduction of food in the buccal or in the oral cavity. That is ingestion. The second one is digestion. The second one is digestion. After the food has been introduced in the buccal cavity, this food is subjected to digestion, a process by which complex, large food particles are broken down into small, soluble, and simple substances. That is, breaking down of large, complex food particles into small and simple materials. The third step is absorption. That is, after the food has been digested, the end products of digestion are absorbed. They are made to diffuse into the bloodstream. Diffusion of the end products of digestion into the bloodstream. And after absorption, there is what we call assimilation. The process by which the absorbed food is made into use by the body. It is subjected to physiological processes such as respiration. It may be incorporated into body cells so as to build or to become part of the body tissues. That is assimilation. And finally, there is what we call digestion. Digestion, after digestion has taken place, we have two categories of products. We have the diffusible materials, that is the use of food materials which made to diffuse, to be absorbed into the body. But we have the indigested food remains. The indigested food remains, these form waste fecal matter. So elimination of undigested wastes through the anal opening. Elimination of undigested waste materials through the anal aperture is what we call digestion. Now, having seen these steps followed by the holozoically taken in food, we have digestion in mammals. So, the concept of digestion in mammals In the discussion of this, we have to meet the following concepts or the following objectives. Structure of epithelial tissue, structure of epithelial tissue in relation to digestion, the second one, types and sources, digestive juices, the third one, composition of the digestive juices, and lastly, sensory and or hormonal control of secretion of the digestive juices. Now, how can we define digestion itself? What definition did we give when we were talking of the steps involved in holozoic nutrition as far as digestion is concerned? Well, remember we said that digestion is a process by which complex, large, insoluble food particles are broken down into simple, soluble, small, and absorbable forms along the alimentary canal, along the digestive tract. And this digestion is of two types. There are two types of digestion. One, we have mechanical digestion or physical digestion. This is a type of digestion in which the food molecules, the food materials, the food particles are broken down physically. They are broken down mechanically without changing their chemistry, without altering the chemical composition, chemical nature of the food itself. For example, we have the action of teeth on food. In the mouth, on the buccal cavity, the teeth do not change the chemistry of the food, but rather grinds this food, which becomes downsized from larger form into small particles. But also we have the action of bile on fats. This bile has no enzymic effect, has no any chemical effect on the lipids. Rather, it breaks down larger oil or fatty droplets into smaller one in a process called emulsification. We shall see the significance of this later. But also talk of the rhythmic movements. Talk of the rhythmic movements of the esophageal muscles in order to effect peristaltic movement. When the food is getting swallowed along the esophagus, there are contraction and relaxation of the esophageal muscles. When these muscles are contracting and relaxing, they exert some mechanical forces that in a way may break down the food particles containing a bolus from larger form into smaller form. But also we have the churning effect of the walls of the stomach. When these walls of the stomach are moving mechanically, they tend to break down food particles or food materials from larger particles into smaller ones mechanically. The second type of digestion is chemical digestion. This is a hydrolytic process whereby complex food materials is hydrolyzed into simpler forms. Talk of an example of starch. Well, this starch is hydrolyzed by salivary amylase. And the products that are formed are, we have maltose. So the breaking down of starch into maltose under the influence of salivary amylase. This is typical a chemical digestion because we have the chemistry of this starch changing, the chemistry of this carbohydrate changing from a complex form to a simpler form, from a polysaccharide to a disaccharide. So chemical digestion is effected by the presence of enzymes. Now, what are the sources? What are the sources of the enzymes? Well, the enzymes are secreted or produced by their respective glands. They are produced by their respective glands in the alimentary canal. And along the alimentary canal, there is an epithelial tissue which contains these glands that, in effect, secrete digestive enzymes. And this epithelial tissue, of course, it is a sort of tissue, it is a group of cells that lines either the external parts of the body or it may be lining the inside of the body structures. For example, the inside of the blood vessels, the alimentary canal, the walls of the heart, and what have you. And this epithelial tissue, histologically, is classified into two categories. We have the simple epithelial tissues, but also we have the compound epithelial tissues. Simple epithelial tissues. The simple epithelial tissues include tissues like squamous epithelial tissue. We have cuboidal epithelial tissue. We have columnar epithelial tissue. We have ciliated epithelial tissue. We have pseudostratified epithelial tissue, but also we have the glandular epithelial tissues. However, not all of these are involved in the process of digestion. We have the cuboidal epithelial tissues, we have the columnar epithelial tissues, glandular epithelial tissues, and the pseudostratified as parts of the esophagus. Compound epithelial tissues. The compound epithelial tissues, these are, we have stratified epithelial tissues and transitional the stratified epithelial tissues, and transitional epithelial tissues. Now, let us see the structure of the epithelial tissues. Epithelial tissues in relation to digestion. That the epithelial tissues, as I have said here, they are classified into simple and compound. Well, for the simple epithelial tissues that are found along the alimentary canal, first of all, we have a columnar, simple columnar epithelial tissue. This is only one cell thick. The cells are elongated and column-like. And these cells are interspaced by mucus-secreting cells called goblet cells. These secrete mucus. And the free end of each cell has finger-like extensions. These are called microvilli. There are microvilli to increase surface area for absorption, and the cells contain a nucleus, and they rest on the basement membrane. So we have So here we have the microvilli. The aggregation of these microvilli form what we call a brush border. And here we have mucus. And therefore, this is what we call goblet cell. This is columnar cell. Here we have a basement membrane. And here we have the microvilli. Now, where is this a type of simple epithelial tissue located? First of all, it is found in the stomach walls. Here, the mucus plays two roles. One, it protects the cells of the stomach walls against the action of hydrochloric acid. It is making a barrier to separate hydrochloric acid from the walls of the stomach, the cells that form the walls of the stomach. But secondly, the mucus prevents what we call autodigestion, self-digestion, to prevent the effect of the enzymes containing in the gastric juice that may act on the proteins that make or that form the walls of the stomach. Apart from the stomach, this tissue is also located in the intestines. In the intestines again, the mucus prevent self-digestion, but the brush border, I mean the microvilli, increase the surface area for absorption and secretion. That was columnar epithelial tissue. My dear student, let's have a short break, after which we will be right back. So don't go away.